All right, so we're going to get deeper into the weeds or forest. If you have any questions as we go, we're getting into specifics. I will get into details as we go, but I'm kind of layering them so not to dump everything on you at once. It's important for retention and all of that. Break things down. Okay, so we do vertical production. The vertical farming to us is the farming of the air, of course, and we do that through the canopies. So the first vertical production that comes out of this system is the hazelnut. We also now have sugar maples in Minnesota and basswood. We'll be getting timber, firewood, charcoal, nuts, all kinds of vertical production systems. So when you think of regenerative agriculture and you think of one of these units, don't think of an acre as, 43,600 square feet, roughly, right? That's not an acre to us. That's not the way I measure an acre. An acre to us is 12 feet below ground, 12 feet above ground, by the same measurements horizontally. So we are looking at a cube. And a cube, an acre to me, is more like 1,100,000 cubic feet. That's what I'm farming, not a surface. And this is, again, that's another one you gotta have to turn that switch on, otherwise you can't see the rest of this. When you think of an acre like that, the other 99% of the potential just opens up right in front of you. And so think of it that way, because this is why right now, for example, our production of hazelnuts per bush is out producing between 2 and 4 times the average producer all around us in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, because of this, the magic of the free energy. That's really what we're counting on. And we are getting better quality. We haven't tested the nutrition yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we also have more nutrition in this, because there's manure coming in that has this abundance of minerals and nutrition that the chicken is not using, that is being passed on so that the tree can then use, fix it, bring it back down. All of that cycle, actually, every year it increases in its diversity of sources of energy. And so because of that, it is just a matter of logic that it's going to result in a larger amount of nutrition in the actual products we are harvesting. We started doing a lot of garlic. This has alley crop garlic in 2-acre long rows by 8 rows, so that we can mechanize that. You know, we're not all against mechanization, all of that. We're not radical in a way. We are radical in terms of being efficient farmers, but we're also radical in terms of eliminating labor. So work, let's put it this way, work isn't really what we are looking for. We're looking to harvest things. And if we could do that without even moving a finger, that's where I'll do it. I wrote a book, it's called In the Shadow of Green Men. And we open up by explaining that we are engineering as if we're allergic to work. And if you engineer that way, you are going to end up, really enjoying a lot more of what you do. These units are very, very fun to be at. Within 1 day after we rotate the chickens, you can't find manure. You can walk in there and it's a sweet smell that comes out of it. There is no stink or anything like that. There's no room for it. And if sometimes it gets wet for like 3 or 4 days and it's raining, like Minnesota's been like that for the last 3 years. So we noticed that, you start bringing in, the chickens start bringing in moisture into the coop, and so that ammonia starts to build up. Well, all you need to do is, bring some of wood chip some of your wood, make some biochar, and I can show you how to make a biochar reactor with 2 trash cans. We made that, pretty simple, and then we put that into the coop, manage the moisture a little bit, and we get rid of that ammonia really quickly. Also because we are not putting 100,000 chickens in there, so we can manage all of that much easier without breaking our backs. But again, you can put all kinds of alley cropping. So some folks are doing soybeans. We are trying to eliminate soybeans in our diet. One of the reasons we are doing hazelnuts is because the hazelnut per acre produces more biomass than soybeans, produces you the meal and the oil the oil is equivalent in DNA to the olive oil, extremely healthy, very good for you, and produces a meal that is 2 or 3 times more nutritious than the soybean meal, and we can put that and replace the soybean in the chicken feed. So it's a double-sided equation there, but also the hazelnut needs no tilling, needs very little fertilization. You never have to irrigate this because they got 12 feet deep roots, 15 feet in diameter of root systems. That plant is going to be there months after the corn and soybeans have died out in a drought. Yes?
Have you calculated the input cost? Like, this is going to be no cost at some point because other than what it took for you to originally put the hazelnuts in. Like with that hazelnut meal versus the input cost of soybeans.
We haven't done the numbers yet because we don't have the scale, but I'm going to give you a brochure and pass this around, take it home, sign up so we can get those numbers the right way. We just launched the 1 million hazelnut campaign.
Right.
And so we want to do that in every state, in 13 states in the Midwest. So 13 million hazelnuts is what we want to plant as fast as we can. And really fascinating because it's only $7. If you got $7 to spare, put it into the hazelnut campaign. That's what it takes to take a hazelnut from seed all the way to production 5 years later. And so with only $1 to administer the system. And this way we can get to the scale that we need in order to get the real numbers. Because
how many hazelnut trees do you think, or how many bushels of hazelnut or whatever, is going to be equivalent to the kind of feed that you have to use with a soy-based?
don't know. That's the truth there. We don't know. What we know is that the nutritional profile of the hazelnut is so superior and rich in methionine. Now, if you raise chickens, you know what that means in numbers, in money, and in independence from the industrial feed supply. And also we have now tested a high methionine corn. So open-pollinated, high methionine corn, you take that with high protein as well, so 10% or so. Then you take that, combine it with high methionine, high protein meal, and it's not just going to be about the soybean. It's going to be about the whole, the whole equation. Soybean is the most expensive component of your feed. If you think of it of a ton, let's start by something was happening here while I was talking. So think of it this way. To raise a chicken in a conventional barn, the conventional way, you need about, the farmer spends about 60 to 70% of what they bring in feed. That's the most expensive part. Next to it is their labor. And next to it is all of the other stuff like heating, cleaning, all of the other things they have to do, right? So in a non-conventional farm, whether you are dragging chicken tractors across a field or you have chickens in a building and then letting them out, but not really managing forages and food and all of that, you're going to have a much higher cost of feed because now the chicken is spending more energy. It needs more food, but you're not getting a bigger chicken. You're still getting the same chicken. And you're working a lot more per chicken because you got a few chickens. Well, we didn't want to do that either. We didn't want to do the confinement, and we didn't do that other side either. And so in the middle is this sweet spot where we actually work through the engineering. So one of the things that we know is that as we look at the equation of the feed, and we look at this potential with the combinations of high protein, high methionine grain, corn, and high protein, high methionine content soybeans, the chances that we are going to completely knock that equation are really high. Last year, as I was telling you before, we raised one flock that we pushed it to the extreme. We had it with no feed, zero, for 4 weeks. Only sprouts under the trees and sprouted artificially so we could give it more biomass. Now the protein content wasn't high enough. But that was the only thing missing. And so we put the regular feed back in there, and this year we're going to test, because we got enough hazelnuts, to just put the hazelnut meal out, and now we're going to know what happens. Because what if we don't even need the feed meal, the feed mix altogether? Because the only thing that was missing was the protein. If we put that back in the hazelnut, we probably won't even be comparing it to soybean meal. The reason, because it won't operate the same way. Because we're looking at, again, the feed, we're looking at it from the other angle, and from the other angle, it's a lot more than what we do with traditional ground up feed. So everything we do that way. And that's why can't answer that question, but I know from just the response we have seen in the chickens that this is very easy, because you can take these hazelnuts in their husk. You don't even have to dehusk them. Put them right through the mill, and throw it in the field or throw it in a space, and the chickens will peck the kernels clean. And then you just let the rest of it become biomass, organic matter in the field.
At some point, it just becomes a little bit of labor to get the meal out.
Yeah, but think about 90 cents to $1 a pound of meal, and more than that for the supplements. And the meal is at, it's at 25 to 30% of the total ration in a ton. And so the amount of money that we throw into the soybean meal in the feed ration is actually really large. So if you follow the equation, the farmer is paying 60 to 70% of their cost of raising the chicken in feed, and 25 to 30% of that is the most expensive ingredient, which is soybean meal. And that soybean meal is there because of the protein, because it has not very much of anything else. And now we have this corn that is high in protein, which we are sprouting, which doubles the protein, by the way, when you sprout it. We may actually need just a few, we may need only 5% of hazelnut meal than we would need of soybean meal. We don't know that, but that's the equation we're playing with.
So you think it'll be a lot less hazelnut meal to make up for this?
Oh, we know that. We know that for sure, because
If you're sprouting that.
if you're sprouting, right. But even if you're not, the bottom line, well, no, yes. Let's leave it at that, because the system has to be implemented completely for it to actually have these symbiotic actions.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So, yes, you had a question back there.
Well, yeah, I was just, you sort of mentioned, I was going to ask if you just kind of throw out hazelnuts to chickens.
Oh, no.
Because, I mean, how do they get into them?
You kill them.
Pardon?
You kill them because they will choke on them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
Turkey, though,
what's the
the-
process? Pardon?
the turkey will eat them, and the pigs.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
we already have that in the plan.
Okay,
You
so
just-
how,
yeah.
what is it you do to the nuts?
Oh, just crack them. You can put them through a roller mill. You can do whatever you want with them. You can, yeah. I mean, the key is, are you going to be part of a scalable system? Then you're not going to mess with little things. You're going to. One of the things we did was we found this farmer that does soybean meal, got a double roller system, roller mill. Perfect. You open up the top wider to crack the bigger ones. The smaller ones go right through, and you calibrate the bottom one to get all of them. And what you have is this thing ready for the chickens. And you can do that in millions of pounds a day. The scalability here is not the issue.
Yeah,
We,
small production, I don't have any kind of,
yeah, we have to. Yeah, I mean, and in small scale, you really are looking at a whole different equation. Our aim was, can we replace conventional chicken? And that is what, 8.2 billion chickens. We don't do that in 100 chickens at a time. Let's put it that way. Well, I said we will do it one at a time, but not alone, not by itself. Oh, this is what's going on. Let's see.
Does it have that resume?
Yes, some
Just click resume.
on the top. Okay, haha. If you would just give me the resume button. Is it down here?
No. Is it not? Try clicking.
There. Oh, it's here now.
Here it is.
There is somewhere in there. Ah, that's where it was. Okay.
There.
Okay, so now let's go deeper into those weeds, okay, step by step. Here's the process. All of you know how the chickens arrive. 2 days old. Even if you are a contractor for Tyson, your chickens arrive the same way. Now you're going to put them in one environment versus this other environment. But at that point, the only thing is that we're not ordering Cornish broilers or any of those animals. We're ordering from a different supply altogether. You probably do the same thing. We have a rondel, the heater in the center. You can see this very well distributed chickens. Just a simple observation will show you if they are cold or if they are warm. So if they are packed up, if they are cold, if they are spread out and away from here, that means they are too hot. So we have a thermometer and we track that, but this heater was good. It's been good in Minnesota. We put the bucket feeders right away so they get used to them. Another reason is because we don't want feed inside the buildings at all. The broilers are fed from 4 weeks on. They're only fed outdoors. The key is to have no chickens inside a building. So they're all under the trees and all of that all day long. So the standard is 4 weeks indoors. They grow just about that look in 4 weeks. We tracked our pattern of growth compared to the industrial pattern. There is no way to compare it. From that perspective, we would be failing because they don't grow, in the stick-like system. In fact, they don't grow very much at the beginning, and that's important. It's important because of organ development. The efficiency of transformation of feed later on is the result of good, strong, early organ development. And so we are putting sprouts on the chickens from day 21. 21 days, we start putting sprouts. We use smaller seeds at that point. We don't use the corn. But we want to do that so that they develop their gizzards and all of that in a much stronger way, which makes them a lot better foragers later on. So all of those are parts of the practices that are in our production manual that you will have access to. I mean, if you decide to deploy this system, we got all of this written up and the training processes and all of that. If we were doing a training today, formal training, we will stay on this slide for quite a bit. When you don't have a developed paddock, so you see the hazelnuts here are very tiny. This is like the 3rd year. And then we lost all of the ones close to the building because, this one I had put apples here. There's apples here too. And I had put cherries. I had like 15 different species of bushes and trees and all of that because we wanted to see each tree's reaction. To the broilers, the trees react very different to the broilers than they do to the egg layers, just so you know. They are not compatible. But we didn't realize that the chickens love the hazelnuts. They ate them all the way to the stump and killed them on the first year. So we lost that, and I have it here because there are challenges and there is things that we learned that we now don't have to go through. You guys would cruise right through because you don't have to make all those mistakes. So then we replanted them and then protected them. But the ones farther out, we never had to protect them. And they did really well, and you will see what this unit looks later. But key is that while you don't have a canopy and it's developing, we need to have a canopy of annuals that we can use to protect them anyway. They still need the canopy. Without the canopy, they will not range all the way. We can bring the broilers, they can go up 200 feet away from the building if there's a canopy. They will stay right here if there is no canopy. And they will run into the building the second there is any bird or anything flying around. So if we don't have the canopy, we're shot because we are increasing the feed demand of the chicken because it's spending more energy, and we got no benefit whatsoever. So you can see the corn from the previous year was windrowed here, and then we will windrow the sunflower leftovers. We chipped up the sunflowers, but it's really incredible how quickly we can build organic matter and all of that and change the whole foundation of the soil. We went from 2% when we got this space. It was a conventional field in 2006. By 2009 and by 2011, when we took the next samples, we had 9% organic matter. And then the next year went up to 11% organic matter. And you know what that means in farming. That means you never have to put even a spit on that soil to grow anything you want, and it will grow wild. So again, this is the same product, just a few days later. Once you have nutrition in this soil, all of that fertilizer, everything grows like a weed. So in the 4 weeks they were inside, we had these pretty tall sunflowers. They are Mammoth Sunflowers, so they are not the short variety that grows slower. These grow really fast, and we wanted that variety for that reason, because we wanted that canopy higher up, not too close to the ground. So then we also, when I go out there, the leaves are really brittle. You can actually knock them down really fast. So we actually provide the leaves, the lower leaves of the sunflowers, we feed them to them as forage. Very nutritious stuff, and they love the lower leaves. But also what happens is it clears up the bottom, so when the chickens are little, they still go very far, a few of them, and you will lose those birds. Some of them can't find their way back to the building on the first days. Now this way they can always see the building, because that little opening there, you have a light inside, so that as it gets dark, it's very simple for them to see where the shelter is, and they go right in. And only twice or so after the first day they go out, you have to shoo back the last few. You close the door from outside, turn the lights out, and the next day only a couple are left outside. By the third, fourth day, all of them go in by themselves. So all you are doing is closing the door. That's all the labor there is at the end of the day. We calculated that we can raise a 1,500 bird flock I raised one flock with 60 hours of labor for the whole flock. That was less than 15 minutes a day taking care of the animals. No, around 15 to 30 minutes, something like that. But you do the math. Then there was another farmer who took 250 hours to do the same exact thing. Now all that was different is their flow of work, the way they engineered the process. This farmer I was tracking, he was from El Salvador, and well, he was used to just doing his backyard thing back in El Salvador, never thought too much of it. And the only difference was the way he moved things around. The way he accessed his unit, where he placed the door, the gate, to access to close. I mean, if you put it down there, you're going to walk more to go over and back. And guess what? When you're going to feed, and you're going to feed outside, you're also going to walk more. Now, I watched him once, taking a bag of feed, putting it in his shoulders and walking all the way, and went and poured it and then came back. I calculated, now that was easily 15 to 20 more minutes to do that with no need for it. All we did was put a bin and order the truck. They fill it up. Even if we feed by hand, we're not carrying stuff around. That's all it took. It was just created work. It was unnecessary work, which produces no benefits to anybody, and it could break your back. And I want to do this until I'm 90. So I'm not interested in work. But we will work very hard, because I come in here, instead of spending my time on worthless labor, I am harvesting forage for them. And I'm putting more forage here, which has a very direct return on investment. Hauling feed has no return on investment. Hauling water has no return on investment. You think of that as a business as well as ecologically and so on. That's really the foundation of triple bottom line regenerative engineering. So they clean up the bottom really well. This still has a lot of stumps in there that are going to grow really quickly right back, but they clean it up really nicely. But you see this canopy, there is no space for a hawk to zoop down and grab our chickens. We have only lost one chicken to a hawk in the 10 years we have been raising chickens. All right? So the whole aerial predator thing is just because we don't know how to work with nature that is a problem. They are not a problem. We are the problem. So on heavy rains, like I told you, is really good for us because the ground just explodes. This is what these blades are these grass blades is barley that in the previous rotation didn't get fully eaten up. So the base was still there, and so we put more grain, and then we put grass, because this was a dry spell, and then we had that rain. So when we saw the forecast, rain is coming, we went back in there, put a lot of grass where there was some more sun, and then, put the grain down, put the grass over it, and then we waited. But the grass that was not completely killed shot right through before the other stuff germinated. So that's what you see here. And sometimes we'll have this blanket, carpet, like incredibly beautiful, seen under. I have some pictures with the egg layers that they just did such a much better job with the managing of that than the broilers do, that they are more enjoyable. We had a lot of grain that year from the sunflowers. This sunflower here measured 24 inches in diameter when it was done. And we had none of them were under like 8-10 inches. It really was massive. The year before, the year after, I can't remember which year was what, but we had corn. Also, incredible quality of corn. This is native corn that we use for tortillas. So it's not corn we're going to feed them. I'm going to eat that. I'm not going to feed that to the chickens. But if we grow more, we could be, this. If you think of it, this same corn could be the corn we're growing for the chickens too, in larger spaces, in alley crops and all of that. So, and that's what we are planning on doing now that we have brought some of the. Well, we have a partner, engineering partner in Iowa. It's called GEI. It's Genetic Engineering International. And he's also an agronomist out of Zamorano, and for 45 years he's been breeding this incredibly high nutrition and density and high protein and amino acids corn varieties that produce just like any other hybrid, but have all of these incredible, nutritional benefits. And something to be said about native corn, and this is why we have to bring back a lot of those seeds. We are doing that too. Think about it this way. In Guatemala, the industrial system has 25 million chickens in confinement producing eggs. The backyard chickens, which according to the Guatemalan Department of Agriculture, is about 1 million backyard, mostly women-ran flocks, has 36 million egg layers. 11 million egg layers more than the conventional system. Now, I was part of that because my mother, and I took care of the chickens for my mother because I always been, a chicken of sorts. So, I know that didn't come out right. My wife keeps telling me to stop inventing words or sentences because they don't work. So anyway, bottom line is, we raise chickens for generations the same way those million plus 36 million chickens are being raised. I had no idea that there was such thing as feed until I went to ag school in 1987. So we know what we're doing here. And the reason that worked is because we didn't have feed corn. We had food corn. That's the big difference, because this corn has nutrition that you will never find in feed corn. And of course, the feed corn, in the way we grow commodities, we strip them out of all the nutritional value. In fact, this Dr. Arden Anderson showed me that if you take a bushel, a bushel is what, 17 3/4 inches by a cube, right? Something like that. Anyway, you take that, that's where the bushel measurement comes from. You fill it up with whatever you want, and then you weigh it, and you say, okay, so barley is 50 pounds per bushel or whatever. Corn is 60 pounds per bushel, or soybeans, whatever. So you go and measure that. Okay, now you take commodities and measure them per bushel how many pounds. You take organic or alley cropped or open-pollinated, more native seeds, and you put them in the same bushel at the same humidity, and you get upwards of 10-15% more weight. And that difference is the nutrition. All the minerals, all of that stuff that is in this corn is not in this corn. And that's why, because we threw the corn under the oranges and the bananas and all of that, when it sprouted, actually was enough to keep the chickens laying eggs. With just a little tweak to that, we can deploy an industrial system that doesn't need much industrial feed supply. Okay, think of that and sleep on that, because that's where we are headed. And when we get to the scale that we are going, and we can actually have the economic power, we will rebuild the poultry industry. That's our aim. So we are either going to fail really large, or we're not going to do anything. But we're not going to putz in between. That was what I promised our team. And if we can't do that, I am happy going fishing. You know. So the computer has this problem with me, but it's okay. I got it. Now I know what I'm doing. This is a full-grown flock of broilers. We harvest at 60, 70, and 80 days when we want to get closer to a standard weight. So they are not going to grow evenly. That's not going to happen in nature. But we can harvest evenly. So it's about managing that process. So if, for example, our large-scale buyers, they don't want a deviation of more than 0.5 pounds from the target. So 3.75, they don't want the chicken more than 425, or, well, we don't want to produce 325, of course, because that would be pound chicken. That would be a bantam or something else, and not worth it, because that's the point where they are actually climbing in efficiency. So that's when you are going to actually gain the most benefit out of the chicken. And it costs the same to process a 4.5 pound live chicken than it costs to process a 6 pounds live chicken. So you're distributing the cost of processing over, say, 3 pounds versus 4 pounds. So the more weight we can produce, the better for the economy of the processor. But also, the markets don't want larger birds. I mean, broilers for fryers are okay at 4.25 pounds. But the airline industry doesn't want more than 3.5 pound birds. You see the size of those drumsticks? So the restaurants also, because the protein is the main cost. Think of it as the feed in a barn. Okay, for a restaurant owner, is the protein in that plate that costs them the most money. And so they can't just take half of a breast, right? They got to serve you the whole breast, the whole thigh, or the whole drumstick. Well, if that is more than what they want to serve you in relationship to the cost of a plate, then that they lose money, right? So all of those considerations, we walk it backwards, and it gives us a standard for when to harvest the chickens and how to manage the whole process, and to standardize it so that we can say, if all of you are producers and we need 100 million chickens that are 3.75 pounds, we know exactly the live weight, because we already know it loses 31% of its weight when we take everything out. So we know exactly what weight we need to harvest. This is not new, though. I mean, we didn't come up with these formulas. The industrial system has this perfected. We're just copying their formulas. There's no need for us to reinvent sugar water in that case. Again, the hazelnut understory is central to that production unit, or any other nut species. We, in that year, we tested our biochar, homemade reactor, to see if we could do it at a small scale, so that every farmer with a few production units, we don't need a big processing facility. If we do, then we set up as an enterprise sector, and we'll have that as a business. If not, we're just going to do it, with simple stuff that, you can do around the fire. And so we dried up the sunflower wood chips, and then we put them through our reactor. It's simply 2 trash cans, the 55 and the smaller one, aluminum cans. If you put one inside the other, both of them have lids. And if you look at it, the space that is left in between the 2 walls is just around 2.5 inches. And so you take a little lifter, riser on the bottom, and you raise that, and that raises the top, and it's just very consistent across. And now you can just drill the holes and manage the oxygen in there. And the oxygen is the foundation to pyrolysis, which is the foundation of the gasification of the chemical elements inside the cell so that they can be expelled out of the cell without destroying the cell wall structure, which is the foundation of good quality biochar. It's not complicated, but you do have to manage that process so the temperature doesn't go above 300 Fahrenheit, and it's a slow process so that eventually it kills itself, or you kill it so that you seal the oxygen intake, so you end up with that biochar. So at a small scale is a $50 reactor with a 1/4 inch drill. You can drill the holes and then put it into a space where you can actually coordinate, manage the inflow of oxygen. The rest of it is sealed. So, and then you poke the same holes on the lids, and around the center, you put the material in the center, you heat it up like we do with the biochar, and then once it ignites and starts producing its own flame, the pyrolysis process on the wall, then it keeps itself until it runs out of gas. So that's what we did. It took us about 10 tries, but we eventually got it to that space because we were just using soil around the bottom. So we'll put more soil or less soil. And then I tried with seal material where we could open up a little space, but then we noticed that the air goes right through and it sucks it up in one corner. So we needed to spread it and all of that. Eventually what I did was I took a pipe, buried it, brought it under, and then put the biochar reactor over it so the air could be manipulated with the pipe. And then we got it to a better space. I mean, if you are a farmer, you're going to figure this out. It's not really complicated. Okay, now let's go. So we got a production unit, and you decided you're going to do 5, 6 production units so that you can bring in, by bringing in $1 per chicken, you can bring in your $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of income, right? So you calculate how many production units you want on your farm based on how much you want to make on the chicken side of your operation, right? So,
Could you repeat that again about the revenue part?
so the way we calculate this is every farmer needs to get at least $1 per chicken, right? Right now, because we can sell more expensive because we are still small and you can still go to the niche markets. As we grow, we will become more efficient. And so the farmer can continue to get $1 for quite a while because we can drop the prices of other things like transportation. Hauling with birds right now is very expensive because we are hauling 1,500 bird flocks. Well, what about when we are hauling 10,000 bird flocks or 5,000 bird flocks? That extra saving can go to consumer, so the farmer doesn't have to, lower their cost either. As we put more feed, more technology, we're also lowering the cost of feed, which is why the farmer loses a lot of money. And so that increases the farmer income, but sustains the rest of it. So we can continue to drop the price to the consumer as we achieve more efficiencies in handling, especially the poultry processing facility. That's where the bottleneck is for broilers, is the processing facility.
So when you're saying $1 per chicken, that's how much the farmer profits off the chicken?
We don't talk about profits. What we talk is about, it's income. It's income.
It's revenue.
Yes, but it's income you keep, right? So most farmers actually,
Income you keep is not. So it's the net.
yes, the net, but it's not net profit. It's just net income. So we don't we don't actually have to make profits.
Well, profit
You know.
in my definition would just be the excess, what's left over after all the expenses are paid.
Yeah, but that is not profit. Well, I mean, unless you already included your labor, your health insurance, your farm insurance, all of those things that farmers never put into their cost of production. After we do all of that, yes, then we'll call it profit. And so after you paid all of that, in fact, nobody's doing it right now anyway. So if we do that, I'll be happy just doing that. I don't care about profits. I just care about benefits, is what we call them. And those benefits are really what we are striving for. The profits, we think of it more of a system profits. And so the ownership and control of the system is critical, so that if there is system profits, we bring them back to the farmers, the middlemen, and all of that. And we spread that. That's the way we are thinking about this, and that's why we have to organize this as an industry, because as a farm operation, it's just not going to pan out. Because it's a very competitive market, and you can't outcompete the market at the beginning because it's too massive. And so we can outcompete it in the argument, we can outcompete it in terms of claims and quality. And now that the Chicken Council, the U.S. Chicken Council, came up with this new data that shows that upwards of 80% of consumers don't want chicken that they can't tell where it came from. This is going to change the whole equation for us, because we have integrity and authenticity. And that authenticity and integrity is going to allow us to keep that higher margin. Hopefully then there will be profits. But if there are no profits, at least we take care of every farmer and everyone in the middle. And that's already a tremendous advantage today compared to how farmers are volunteering their time and their labor to feed the world. Yes?
So with the system already the way it is, even before scaling at this enterprise level, industrial level type scale, the farmer's still making a living from the net, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the idea. And right now we can sell at quite a good price. Because again, we're still on a niche stage, but we know once we move out of that, we're going to have to start dropping those prices. What I was describing is the way we plan to do it is by scaling mechanized parts that don't produce value, but cost money. Like processing the chicken, hauling the chicken, delivering the chicken, it produces no value. The chicken value, it's already defined on the farm. The rest of it is just wasted stuff that we have to do so the consumer is happy. If they could just pick the chicken live, go pluck it and kill it and eat it, that's the way I would do it. But unfortunately, we are no longer smart like that. So here is how we are planning to build this as an aggregation process so we can scale this. So you put both the egg and the broiler in the middle, and then just like the industrial system has done, we start aggregating. Meat poultry processing, that is the bottleneck for deploying a broiler system. So there is a scale, a minimum scale we have to achieve to make it work. And that's what defines how many farmers we're going to deploy, how many chickens per farm, and all of that, right? So once you have what's the density and all of that a unit can produce, we go back and say, okay, what is it going to take to deploy an industrial level, light industrial level park where the center is the processor. And then we go back from there. You don't go from the farmer over, otherwise we end up shut. Because right now, nationally, that is the biggest problem. So we got to solve that by going backwards. Grain processing is absolutely critical because we need to prepare the grain for sprouting and also to grind some of it for that supplemental feed. And we want to get the grain production in line because we want to supplement, to replace those genetically degenerated varieties with these genetically rich, nutritionally dense varieties. So it has to be part of the system, otherwise we don't achieve all of those cost benefits that I was talking about and competitive advantages in terms of claims of the product, preference of the product, all of the things associated with the end product can't be achieved if we don't line it up. But to line it up, we have to have scale. And that scale, minimum scale, is defined again by that processor. So manure management now these all become enterprise sectors, not farms, but conglomerates, so nucleuses. And so when you're done with this, we're putting alley crops, agroforestry, fish production, because we got guts and all of that, and this is best put into fish production. Rather than composting it, let's get another lean, high-quality food out of it within a few hours after you produce the byproduct. It's just like if you take the compost from your kitchen and you put it in a compost pile, it's going to be 9 months before you see soil. You feed it to the chickens, 48 hours later, you got a fertilizer that is absolutely, incredibly powerful. And you took no labor, you got eggs and meat out of it, and on top of it, you don't have a compost pile, you don't have flies, you don't have stink. it just changes the whole thing when you understand energy flows. That's what we're doing here. So we got byproducts of the processor. We want to put them in as input to another production system. So we are now looking at large-scale fish production as we deploy our first processor in Minnesota. It's part of the chicken project, even though it may not sound like it if you're looking at it from this angle. From this other angle, you see the whole moon, like I said before. Fish and vegetable processing, now that we have alley crop processing, then can be put into another processor so that we can bring them as supplements back into the chicken. You can do that with fish. You can't do the byproduct of the chicken, put it back into the chicken as feed. That will put us in a very, very genetically degenerated situation and end up with mad chickens instead of mad cows, instead of happy chickens. So once you aggregate this, what you end up with is with the industry blueprint. That is how we change. That's how we design systems. A system, a farm is not a system. A farm is but a component when we actually think about production systems and food systems. So the end really is a larger regional energy regenerative flow that is endless, that has a triple bottom line impact. And we can do this at scale. We now also have figured a process. So if you want to go ahead and get this done in this region, we first gather info, establish local operating partner. We're not going to come and do this. You do it. One of you, organizations or companies or whatever, cooperatives, becomes our operating partner. And then we build a team with that operating partner. And that team is the one that does what we do in Minnesota. They do it here. We just transfer everything to that team. And that's why it takes a little bit, but it's for sure. It's permanent. There's no backtracking once we do that. Then with that team, once trained, we develop the Poultry Center Regenerative Agroforestry business, and business meaning businesses within that checkerboard, and then within the checkerboard components, each one of those business operations, farms and so on, and also the larger system blueprint so that we know how fast we got to move and to what extent we're going to be managing this risky up to the point that we reach that benchmark where we actually have a fully operating processing facility. Once we do that, then we deploy production. We also have branding and all of that we can bring to your region. But we don't touch the ground, we don't build a coop, we don't order a chicken until those steps are done right so that we know the real potential of what we're going to do. If we don't do that, what you're going to do, you're going to end up doing is going and raising a few chickens and struggling with it. I struggled my whole life. Most of us immigrants have struggled. Struggle doesn't attract me. And if I'm going to farm, I'm not going to do it struggling. Simple. I better not do it if I'm going to struggle as a farmer. So that's why we are methodical about it, not only in the business development and management, but on the science and technology as well. The growth is after you deploy the first phase, because not everything happens at once, right? We start very small and we close loops. So maybe 2-3 coops, and we do backyard processing. It doesn't matter. The key is we know why we're doing it and we know where we're headed. So if we do that as a first step, we put it together and then we grow from there, another layer. Right now in Minnesota, we just bought a mobile poultry processor after 4 years of doing all kinds of other processing, right? But we are measuring those cycles so that every year we grow to a new level, and we know it's 1.7 million broilers. We're not going to stop doing that until we reach that, and we're going to speed it up as fast as possible until we reach that level so that we can have our processor that can process chickens under $2 per chicken. That will put us at a competitive advantage in the market, economically speaking. Better than what we have, not yet done. The real competitive advantage will come when we reach 10 million broilers and at least 65 million eggs. That is systems thinking. The farmer is still going to be a small farm. We're not going to compromise that. That's ethically and by principle what we want. But the system can't be tiny. Otherwise, we don't make it.
So are you saying that your goal is to get to 10 million before it actually starts to really make sense? 10 million birds?
No, it makes sense. It just makes sense in different ways.
Okay.
So it makes sense before that because we can sell in niche markets and we can sell more expensive product, more direct and all of
But
that.
to compete with factory farms, if you will, you need to.
Yes. Now, I wouldn't say compete. We're not interested in competing with them. We're interested in replacing them.
You gotta compete before you replace them.
No, not exactly. They can't compete with us. We can't. See, the thing is, they can't compete. Yeah, there is no comparison. There is no comparison because they can't compete with our claims. They can't compete with our story. They may sell cheaper food, but that actually is their disadvantage. That, if you think of it, is not an advantage for them. Cheap is actually becoming a problem, and as
Re-educate everybody.
exactly,
Not competing.
exactly. And so, well, we are competing. It's just that we are competing with intellect, not on prices. And everybody locks into competing on price the minute we talk about competition. And that's what I want to get ourselves. That's another switch we got to turn off and open up the other one. Because we are competing, but we are competing with intellect, not on price. And with intellect, we can be here for decades, for generations, because that is permanent. It got no price to it. Everything else, you buy with MasterCard, right? Seen that advertisement? It doesn't work. It never works. My wife keeps saying it doesn't work.
You have to win mind share and not just strictly compete on dollars.
Yeah, we actually don't compete on the dollars. We don't even attempt to. We go and have education, like you said. And fortunately for us, we now have access to millions of consumers through our partners. Between the Organic Consumers Association, the Audubon Society, the Smithsonian Institution that we are now engaging through different partnerships, and some very large companies that are actually helping us educate consumers. And our own clients now that are growing, their own competitive advantage is increasing, and they are not paying us less. They're actually educating more consumers. So it's growing fast enough that we can scale, but that's why we still have to close loops and grow very thoughtfully. Can't grow beyond what we can still market at a good price. If we go and try to scale up too fast, then we're going to be, in an open field, on an open battle. That we lose. So, got to think like an insurgent. Rule number one of insurgency: never confront a large army in an open field. You are dead before you arrive. That's a number one rule of insurgency. And I'm lucky in a way that we were trained on insurgency. So this is, if you look at this, it's got every single element of an insurgency warfare. It's just another kind. But every single thing we were taught about how to defeat large-scale systems, is in here. And you distract them, you disrupt them, you turn them crazy. That's how you defeat a large-scale system. You don't defeat it by confronting it. So yeah, that's what I mean. We're going to compete, out-compete, yes, but not the way you think we're going to out-compete them. That's why large armies have never been able to defeat insurgencies, because they can never tell how they're going to get hit, right? So anyway, just another tangent, like normal I do. So the roadmap to transition, we could build a production unit to prototype the system, or you could come to Minnesota and we skip that step. We could build a farm level demonstration unit, or you could come to Minnesota and we skip that step. We could go to the regional if you have what it takes to do that from the beginning. It's up to you. It's how you feel about this. This is serious entrepreneurship questions.
Could I ask about the proof of concept? What's the footprint of a proof of concept unit?
Yes. Okay. So, 1 second. I will give you the answer there. So the farming clusters is that checkerboard, and then industry level infrastructure is what we are now building in terms of trading platforms beyond the cluster. So the cluster produces a lot of excess production. We want to trade that on a national trading platform, so that every company can buy our products with a minimum price. Below that, you can't buy out of the platform. It's not like the stock market, but it's structured like the stock market, with a minimum, with a floor price. And then you can bid as much as you want above that, but not below that. And so we are using the energy and gas trading platforms as a way to begin that process as we grow. So the prototype unit, this is that unit that I showed you at the very beginning, before there was any canopy or any of that. This is what it looks like now in the summer. I mean, it goes up and down because we thin it out and so on. But it's really beautiful. Telling you, this whole thing now is garden. In Minneapolis, when I moved there in 1994, my wife and I bought a house, a duplex, and I dug up the whole garden. She was at work, and I was at home with my hoe going at it. And then I was almost done with the whole garden when she arrived back from work, and she put the stakes and kept me from doing the last little piece of grass. Took the whole garden, the yard, and I probably was the first backyard gardener in the Twin Cities. It's just that was in my blood, right? So she staked that and kept that for a little bit of grass to sit around with for picnics. And it looks like we're going to have to do the same here, because now this was the grass area. I just dug all of this up last year. I finally got a tiller for the tractor, so now I can go at a real scale. And so we just have the other side of the house now left with grass. I don't want to be mowing, you know. So anyway, it's fun. We grow about $10,000 worth of food out of this little space. It's 1.92 acres. Most of it is taken up by the front. This is a 0.6 acre production unit. In 2012, I grew and processed chickens right here, and I grossed $45,000 out of this space. I mean, if you don't want to go big and all of that, and you can have that skill and market and all of that, well, one unit would probably be enough. We won't change anything except your life, your farm. We won't change any systems because we do that well. But still, you know, when I was starting, I did that. This is the 1 acre farm, completely designed according to this way of designing. So you got the alley cropping, alleys, you got the production units, and this defined by the topography, by the conditions of that soil. We got a really low water table here. This is a hill. This is a community center. These are the access roads, and so on. We restore all the wetlands. We restored the hydrology to that space. We took out all the tiling that had been installed in there. We restored that water flow, and so on. This is the same farm one year later. We took it corn on corn for 30 years is what had been. There was no life. We drug samples everywhere. Couldn't find a worm. On the second year, it all changed. We put Sudan grass the first year and just built that biomass quickly. This is the first commercial farm we just deployed under the Regeneration Farms LLC. This is 5 production units on the south side. This is already a prepared pig run on the bottom, so we can rotate the pigs in to harvest the hazelnuts and all of that. So it's already designed for integration of other livestock, even though we won't have pigs for another 5 years. It's already spec'd out into the farm design. The production unit for the chicken is still identical to the one we talked about. But now we can start thinking, you know, how to bring in other livestock without creating that labor problem that we keep talking about. And that thing, especially in the winter, you know, people start trying to figure out what to do with the fact that it gets cold once it got cold, but then it's too late. You got to design into it how you're going to manage it in the winter, including the flow. Straight lines are easy to plow, right? So anyway, just to show, we really integrated everything we learned, especially for people like us that get all blue in the winter. This is the production unit I was describing to you before, now framed up and everything. This is the solarium. So this will have greenhouse-like materials. We dug the ground and put in biomass heat collection under the floor, and that increases the comfort for the chickens if we're going to keep them in the winter. We can do chickens in the winter with these units. You can build it without the solarium and just have summer production, or you can build the solarium and go early in the spring and late into the fall, and even one half flock in the winter. Because even though we put 1,500 chickens per flock, you could do 750 chickens in the winter and still have a lot of space. This is to answer your question. One production unit for broiler is 1.5 acres. We can, grow up to 7,000 birds in one unit, We have a methodology with a brooding system, so you don't have the chickens all the way from day one, all the way through in the unit. Rather, you brood them somewhere else, and then you bring 3-4 week old chickens into the unit 5 days after the first flock left, and that cuts down 2.5-3 weeks of time that you will have that building literally idling because the chickens are not using and roaming and all of that. So with that integration, we can grow up to 7,000 chickens in a unit. That's quite a bit of pounds per year. I know we're going to run out of time here very soon. So I'm going to give you these numbers, and then you can have the PowerPoints. But this is way more detailed stuff that I normally get into. We have been selling 3.25 now, still at scale, in 30,000 bird orders. So this is doable. That means 91,000 per unit of gross market value. Farmer gets about $744 to $750 per chicken, so around that much out of the processor value. So this is FOB processor or storage unit, and this is farm gate. Actually, processor gate, because it's delivered on the processor. So, and now we built a legal framework so that we are building all of the boilerplate contracts for 24 different layers of transactions, so we can also eliminate all the lawyers in the system. Because right now it's costing us a lot of money just to keep that going, and it's the same. So it's the same across the country. So we started building that platform. We produce hazelnuts up to 2 pounds is what we are using of in-shell nuts per bush, and about 1,000 bushes per one unit. So we're really looking at around $37,000 of farm gate gross income, of which we expect the farmer to keep about $1 per chicken.
What was the $1 per chicken you just talked about earlier?
It's just what we put into the labor.
Okay, gotcha.
So that the farmer, can get, I think it's between $15 and $25 per hour that they put into producing the chicken. Yeah, so it's just well-paid work, if you ask me. I mean, most farmers growing chickens right now are getting $8 an hour. And most of you growing small flocks are probably not getting any money. When you actually include all your costs, you're probably losing money anyway. So at least we can level it and then grow from there. Get a baseline. So anyway, if you do direct, you can do a lot more, but that's not what we are promoting. I did that, and it works, but it only works for a farmer, and we're not interested in supporting farmers, individuals, we're supporting systems. 5 minutes?
Wrap up, yeah.
Okay, let me just walk you quickly through the egg layer unit. 6 acres is the minimum. 8,000 egg layers is backed up 4,000 and 4,000, so we can mechanize feeding, watering, and egg collection, but not compromise the whole canopy and the whole management of the exterior. So we use that because that's what's working in most of the places where we have taken the technology from now. There's more egg layer technology out there than there was broiler technology. So that's quite a production per unit. We can sell at 2 dozen right now of farm gate value. The total actual cost of inputs is around $1.60 per dozen eggs with organic certified feed, and without removing a lot of that feed cost through the sprouting system yet. We haven't put that into these calculations. Once we put that, this is going to change significantly. We can get up to 10,000 pounds of hazelnuts out of that without counting the elderberries and other things you can get out of it too. So bottom line is we're looking at around $60,000 per acre, plus the fertilizer for up to 20 acres per production unit. So we can grow vegetables and grains and other things with the same input that we have here. That's where the equation starts to add up. That's where the real profit is going to come from. It's the income, we secure it with the chicken, and then everything else is aggregated. Clusters, we are calculating at least 250 production units to get to that 1.75 million broilers, so that we can have a scale sufficient to at least get everybody leveled off. so that nobody's losing money anymore. The processor isn't going to make any money, but at least it's going to break even and the workers are not going to be exploited. They're going to get paid well. Doesn't have to make money because it's not really the enterprise. The enterprise is the whole system. So in a whole system like that, you got areas that don't make money as long as the whole system makes money. And that's why the cooperative or collective or some way of owning that system is critical, because that's where the profit is going to come back from. So it's really important to understand that we are looking at clusters of 25 to $32 million market value. That's what we want to do. That's the minimum that is going to get us out of all of this struggling that we are dealing with right now. So that really puts us at the end of this this analysis. Again, the details for the egg layers, like I said before, is around 30 PUs for 65 million eggs. That is a processor of eggs that is about this whole room plus the alley. We can process those many eggs in a space like that. I visited one of those processors, by the way. So not really a big operation, but the trucking really is the bottleneck on the eggs. Delivery and management of those eggs is where we lose the money, but at no value. So this is critical to have a truck that is dedicated to that cluster that is not wasting space or time, because we make the egg expensive without adding a single iota of value to it by transporting it. This is our MPPU. We just bought it in Minnesota. It's got air chilling, so we can deliver really high quality broilers. And this is our brand. And this brand will be available to you if you want to use it. We are not going to, this is going to be collectively owned nationally. That's our intention. So if the brand makes money, you make money, the farmer makes money, the cluster makes money. That's the principle of regenerating economies. So I think we'll leave it at that, because the last part is really just about how we are building this national infrastructure so that we can also have corporate and policy making capacity and all of that as we grow. And if you are interested in how this whole system looks like, this is our destination. When we are done, we will have a regenerative Department of Agriculture.